We are all changing all the time. And if you're not changing, it's time to start, because we are meant to be transforming, evolving, growing all throughout our life. And when we stop, when we think we're done, that is when the healing stops as well. So I think writing the book has been one of the most clarifying and transformative experiences of my life.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Eversio Experience podcast. I'm Dr. Desiree Caruso. I am your co-host, and today's episode is a really special one because I'm sitting down with someone that you know and love already, my co-host, who's also the co-founder of Eversio Wellness, and now she is soon to be a published author, Brandi Garden. Brandi's new book is launching this July, very soon, and today we're going to dive into the heart of it. This isn't really just about writing a book. It's about the journey, the challenges, the healing, and the magic that went into every page. Brandi, welcome to your own podcast. How are you feeling?
Well, just hearing you say published author, I'm feeling a little different than I have in the past. It's exciting. I'm feeling very, very excited knowing that we are less than a month away from launching a book. That just means so much to me. It's an exciting time. I feel like I'm having another baby after not having had one for 14 years. So I feel amazing.
Awesome. I guess people want to know, what inspired you to write this book and why now?
Yeah, I have been asked that by actually a lot of my family members. Like, don't you have enough to do? Why did you decide to do this? And I think that this book was just really born from a deep soul level knowing that it was time to share the story of how I healed and how others can do the same thing. And the book is called Healing Your Body, Mind, and Soul. And for years, I think I lived this life that looked successful to other people on the outside, but internally, I just have been navigating inflammation from arthritis far too young in my life, since my 20s, dependence on pharmaceuticals for decades, and a real sense of what I would call disconnection to my true self. And I just realized that healing isn't just about removing pain, it's about remembering who you are. And now more than ever, we are in what I think is a collective awakening. People are looking for another way. And this book is my offering to that movement. It's for those people who are ready to reclaim their wellness and their joy and their power by walking on a new path, and one that is rooted in nature and in community and in truth. And now is the time for that.
Mm-hmm. I really think so. I think there's this collective shift in consciousness, and we see this with our community too, where there's this thirst for more. I think functional mushrooms really allow people to enter into that space of health and wellness, and a lot of people who are coming to functional mushrooms are really at the start of this shift for them. And I think it's the perfect time to have this offering for people.
You always say in so many of our episodes, I hear you say how mushrooms bring you back to yourself. And it's so true. And I think I didn't even realize it was happening, and starting to write, those words were often in my mind, just a coming back to self.
Totally. Was there like a moment, maybe it was a conversation or a personal experience, when you just knew that this book had to be written? Like, was there a moment, or was it just this evolution of, I think I'm going to do it?
Yeah, I would say there were, absolutely. But maybe two moments. So my best friend and I went to a meditation retreat 2 years ago now. And after those 7 days getting on the airplane, I was hit with this massive voice that said, why are you playing it so small? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I spent that whole flight questioning the things that I hadn't done, things that were sitting on my bucket list, that why was I waiting for those things? So that was the first kind of, opening the door to that. There was room in my life for something else. And I didn't quite know that it would be a book at that time, but there was a moment, a kind of series of what I would call now soul whispers that had become this roar and a turning point as we had conversations with our Eversio community, because I looked around and saw people craving more than just mushroom products. They wanted purpose, they want education, they want empowerment. And at that same time, I was journaling daily, I'm meditating daily, I'm really processing this transformation that I had experienced over the past decade. And then one day just realized these stories that I am journaling, that I'm meditating on, they're lessons. And this journey is not just mine. It felt like a map. And if it helped me come home to myself, then maybe it could help someone else too.
Mm-hmm. How does this book reflect your personal journey with mushrooms, wellness, and healing? I know those are three really big topics, but how is this book a reflection of that?
Yeah, this book is my journey as I wrote it, and I did not expect this, but every chapter of the book reflects a stage in my awakening. So from all of that inflammation and the pharmaceuticals to the intuition to the mushrooms, I think my relationship with functional mushrooms really became the foundation of a new way of living, one that is so aligned with what we call Earth's wisdom or mushroom intelligence. And mushrooms didn't just support my body, they helped me expand my consciousness. And that's when I really stopped chasing the quick fixes and I started cultivating a lifestyle. And healing became a process of remembering for me, remembering how to trust my body, how to create sacred rituals, and how to be in a relationship with the natural world. So this book is a reflection, I would say, of that journey, and then an invitation for others to begin their own journey.
I love the fact that it's an invitation for others, because often, they need somebody to grab their hand and pull them into something so that they too can feel that pull and that confidence to do that.
And really I needed it. And I think I needed this book.
Yeah.
Where was this book when I needed it? And I hope it will be that for someone else.
I love that. There is so much heart behind this book. I think people are curious about the writing process because this is not a simple task to place on yourself. What would you say was the most challenging part of writing this book, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah. I mean, I majored in English in university, so I went to school to become a teacher. I have a Bachelor of Education, but before I made that decision, I loved writing. I loved the written word, and I think I always wondered if I would write something, but it was always a children's book. I was an elementary school teacher. I love kids. I love learning. I love watching people fire and wire. And I really thought that writing this book was just going to be something I knew how to do because I'd learned how to do it in university. But the most challenging part of writing was facing the rawness of my own story that came out of me as I began. And I truly did not expect that. Writing this book really meant revisiting some of the most vulnerable moments of my life and, grappling with all of the letting go of what I would call now really soul-crushing career that I didn't see in the moment, breaking up with Big Pharma. At times, I felt like I was kind of reopening these wounds that I had only just started to heal. And I really was not expecting that. And what surprised me most was how freeing that was for me. I think it was therapy. The more I wrote, the more clarity I gained, the more it started to just flow from somewhere else through me. And it wasn't just storytelling anymore. It was like this alchemy. And what I thought at the beginning would become draining ended up being one of the most energizing, integrative things that I've ever done. And I would recommend it to everyone, whether you publish or not. We all have a story to share. We're all here for a reason. And when we share those stories, like our Indigenous communities did, somebody will benefit or be moved by them enough to make a change or transformation in their life. So yeah, it was challenging, but also incredibly, incredibly therapeutic.
The power of story for all of us. Maybe that's why journaling for some people is so powerful and cathartic to write. Whether you're typing or writing and getting it out there.
Get it out.
It doesn't live in your body anymore and you can set it free. That's really beautiful. You wear so many hats. You're a founder of a wellness brand. You're a mom. You're a wife. You're a friend. You're your own person. How did you carve out time to write? Like, what did that look like in real life? Like, what was that?
Yeah. I'm not the only one with all the hats. I'm looking through the screen here at someone who has far more hats than I have, I think. But yeah, in real life, it looked like sacred chaos. I'm not gonna lie. I had to kind of write in pockets of time. So before my daughter was up to go to school, between the Zoom calls and the Teams meetings, and sometimes literally scribbling on the back of a receipt in my car while I was waiting at school pickup. Those were the best. When those thoughts just came to me as I'd be alone in my car driving, because I don't get a lot of totally alone time unless I'm sleeping or meditating. I just was like, I need a better way to take notes in my car because I'm getting this download. And I literally had receipts that had the most profound pieces jotted on the back. So I never had long interrupted writing retreats. I've heard people go to writing retreats, maybe one day, but I did not have that. I had real life. But I also had this deep burning desire to get the book in the world. And I did have a writing coach that kept me going. And that desire to get it out to people, I think really fueled me. So I treated writing like it was a wellness ritual, just added on to what I was already, just like my mushroom matcha or my meditation. Yeah. And it ended up becoming something that I craved. And even if it meant writing in the quiet darkness of way too late at night, sometimes it meant I had to ask for help, really leaning on Craig and letting my community, like you, support me along the way, as I encourage others to do as well. You should go after your passions. You shouldn't put them aside because you're too busy, but you do have to ask for help sometimes. And I am grateful to have had that along the way.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also a privilege to be one of the people that somebody asks, I need some help. Can I lean on you? I really need to get this done.
Yeah.
Right. And being a part of that process, even if it's indirectly supporting you so that you can do that and fuel that passion and do the writing and do what needed to be done.
Yeah.
I think there's something so sacred as well in that, being part of that process and seeing somebody really live their truth and accomplish something that is so important to them.
Yeah.
I'm sure it must have been really hard for you to stay grounded and creative during the writing process. And people talk about writer's block. And that's the thing is, you know, sometimes, like you said, you have to have these moments where you're ready to write something down, where on a receipt when something just comes to you. But to help guide yourself and redirect yourself back to that process, were there any rituals or practices in particular to help you stay grounded and creative?
Definitely. And they didn't come in the beginning. They came, I mean, I'm talking to you from my lake house on Shuswap Lake right now. And I think being connected to nature before writing was great for me. So if it was home in the city, getting out and going for a walk beforehand, here just being at the lake felt like part of that ritual. But my writing practice kind of became woven with journaling first, meditation, and then, a session in nature, deep breathing, and then letting it flow through me. So if it was late at night, I'd light a candle. I would have, my mushroom tea there beside me. I took a lot of lion's mane. And just kind of getting grounded into presence became the ritual, just getting really in the moment. And I think those little acts helped to shift me from doing mode to being mode, which we all should do more often anyway. But that's where I think creativity flows more freely for me, because we are generators, and I do tend to be in the go, 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 and I'm definitely not writing from there. So they had to be times when I could really find that being place and just let it come and give myself permission to write intuitively, not always chronologically, which the book did end up coming out chronologically, but I didn't write it that way. Like, I wrote chapter 11 before I wrote chapter 10 because I was feeling it in the moment and it needed to come out. So it did. It came from the heart, and I trusted that the structure would come, but the soul had to speak first.
Mm-hmm. I really love that. Yeah. Having the practice and being present in the moment, I think, is what really resonates with me, is to channel that creativity and speak from the soul. You have to be fully present and embodying your best self, and so that you can speak your truth. That's cool. I imagine, I mean, you said it earlier anyways, that this whole process was very vulnerable for you.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that throughout the process, there's some sort of self-doubt when you're writing, because you're thinking, you know, I'm writing a book and I'm sharing about all of this. Like, did you ever hit a wall or experience any self-doubt while writing? And if you did, how did you move through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think women in general, we all have those, I call it imposter syndrome, and I am healing from that every day. Healing from perfectionism for sure. But there were definitely moments that I questioned if my story was enough. And I would ask myself, who am I to be writing about healing? And every time I would feel that resistance, I would just return to the reader, the person who is going to read this when they are still stuck in the cycle that I broke free from. I would just think about that person struggling to make sense of their health, of their purpose, of their life. And I wrote this book for them. So I just reminded myself, it's not about being perfect. It's about being real. And when that doubt crept in, I just wrote anyway. And I could go back and edit after, but I just let the truth be messy. And every time I moved through it, I came out stronger as a writer on the other side, and more certain that this book was not just a project, but for sure part of my purpose.
Yeah, life is messy sometimes.
It
And
is
the truth
messy.
Is messy.
Yes.
The truth is messy, and there's something beautiful about the authenticity of and realness
Yeah.
that comes out. What would you say is the part, like what part of the book are you most proud of?
Well, just that it is unapologetically honest. I did not hold back from telling the truth about my story, my disillusionment with conventional medicine, which I think I never want to feel like I'm bad talking or slinging mud. But in this book, I tell the truth about my experience with conventional medicine and my own dependency on pharmaceuticals for healing that didn't get me healed. They just masked these symptoms. The emotional toll of living out of alignment with my soul for so long. But I think what I'm most proud of is how I paired those truths with hope, with practices, with tools. So it's not just a memoir. I think of it as a memoir with a message, with a workbook. So it's an invitation. I want readers to feel seen and empowered, not just inspired when they read it, which is so much of what I read on my journey, just inspired by all of these other people who are sharing. And I wanted this to be like the next level where they really feel empowered to do something with that inspiration. So seeing this blend of story and there's nerdy science in there and the soul all come together, especially in the exercises that are in the book and the reflections, it just made me realize I was writing something more than a book. This to me is a guide home for everyone who's ready to join me on that path.
It really is. It really is. You mentioned that this book was cathartic for you and it was emotionally healing, and it was kind of like the last part in a sense of your healing journey is what I'm gathering from that, is just getting it out there, and it's not living inside of you. But I've said before, and one of my favorite quotes is, your purpose in life sits right next door to the most painful moments in your life. And I know a lot of the stories and moments and challenges you share in the book were the hardest parts of your life, and it's now become a beacon of hope for others that, hey, this is me, and you've probably are experiencing or maybe have or haven't similar or different, or just different kind of hard. We all experience hardship. Was there a chapter though, or a specific story from within the book that was especially emotional or healing for you to write?
100%. I feel like chapter 1 was just, I start when I'm 15 years old in chapter 1, just telling like the very beginning of that. And that was emotional because I talk about my parents and how incredibly supportive they were to me in the beginning. But when I got to chapter 3, which the title of that chapter is Breaking Up with Big Pharma, it was definitely the most emotional to write. Ooh, I could get emotional just talking about it now. It just represents this huge rupture in my life. Just letting go of that belief so many people have that a pill or an injection can fix everything, that can fix everything for you. It meant confronting decades of conditioning and fear for me. And I think so many people are still in that conditioning and fear. But it also meant trusting my body in a way that I never had before. And writing that chapter brought so many tears, but it also brought this peace to me. It was like finally saying goodbye to an old version of myself who had done her best with the tools that she had and who was ready to evolve. And that chapter feels like the turning point, not just in the book, but in my life. And I hadn't seen it so clearly until I wrote the words down. So if you read this book when you're reading that chapter, I hope that you feel what I felt at that time, that there is too much conditioning and fear in our world. And when we can break through that, there's a lot of peace on the other side.
There's this quote that I love, and I remember the first time that I read it, it broke me wide open, but it's similar to how you describe this for you, where it really hits you, breaks you wide open, but there's so much peace in it. And it sounds like that chapter is this quote, and it's nobody is coming to save you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. You are the adult.
I have goosebumps. You say it all the time, and it hits me every time. And you can't say it enough. Nobody's coming to save you. You have everything you need to heal. You don't need anybody to save you. We all need support. And that's this community that's been around us, the Eversio community. The people listening to this podcast right now have become that for me. But I think, too often people are waiting. Stop waiting. Nobody's coming to save you, but you can do it. You can do it yourself.
Yeah, nobody's coming to save you. And when you take back that power and you realize that you've been placing power on something outside of yourself and bring it back to you, there's this empowerment.
Yeah.
But that initial period feels really lonely because you realize the full reality of it and you have to show up for yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's guilt and shame in that. People, when we realize that we've been waiting, that we've had expectations on others, we are meant to walk each other home. We are meant to hold hands and walk on this journey beside each other, not to, expect other people to be doing it with us or for us. And I think when we let go of the guilt and the shame, along with the fear and the conditioning, that is when we get to the good stuff.
Yeah, but
and it's good stuff.
It's good stuff. You just got to move through it, right? Yeah. That's the hardest part. If your younger self could read this book, what do you think she would say? What would younger Brandi say? What
a great question. I spent a lot of time with young Brandi in the writing of this. I didn't think I'd be so emotional. She would say, I knew you were in there. I knew you were in there. She would probably breathe a sigh of relief knowing that everything, every misstep, every painful pivot, every sleepless night was leading her back to herself. And I think she would be proud that I listened to the whispers of intuition that she once had to silence. And I think that she would feel very validated in her sensitivity, her curiosity that I still have, and her resistance to the status quo. And I think she would feel safe. Safe knowing that it's okay to ask questions to your doctor, to your family, to humanity, and to feel deeply and to choose a different way.
Yeah, let that one sink in. You mentioned that this book is also for the Eversio community because they've been a source of healing for you. And what do you hope that the Eversio community takes away from this book?
Like we said, I hope they walk away with a sense of empowerment. Like they are not just these passive passengers on a healing journey, but they are creators of it. And I want them to know that healing isn't just possible, it is already within them, just like it was within me. And the book is not about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what has always been whole. And if somebody reads these pages and starts to trust their body again, questions an old belief, creates a new nourishing habit, then I've done my job here. So I hope the book becomes a companion, something that people return to again and again when they need clarity or inspiration or a reminder that they're not alone. You are not alone. We are right here with you. We are all connected.
We are. How does this book deepen or expand the mission of Eversio Wellness?
Wow. Our mission is to change lives through fungi, and it's always been about more than just mushrooms. It is about consciousness. It is about connection. It is about creating a new paradigm of wellness, one that respects the intelligence of nature and the sovereignty of each individual. And I hope that this book gives voice to that mission in a deeply personal way for those of you already in this community. It tells a story behind the supplements, behind the mushroom extracts, behind all the nerdy science, behind that brand. And I think it really shows the why. And in doing so, I hope it helps our community to see themselves as part of something larger, a real movement toward healing that is truly grounded in love and in nature and in radical self-trust. So the book is really both a love letter and a blueprint for the world that we are trying to build through Eversio, and we have been since day one. And, I talk in the book about building a conscious business, and we did not build that as, the founders or the teammates. We built that as a community. So the book really is for all of you, and it is my love letter to all of you for being on this healing journey with me.
We often say too that, when we're at the boardroom table and it's the 6 of us in a team meeting, there's also technically a 7th seat, and that is our Eversio community. And we've shared on the podcast before that we have a community love group chat on Teams, and that's where we share heartfelt comments, stories, reviews, whether it's an email from social media, things that really touched us. And we often are tearing up all the time, and there's so many beautiful stories and messages that we get from our community. But were there any in particular in the book that were inspired by the community itself?
Well, I just think, so many. And that, is my favorite part of every day. Lori, our coordinator of chaos, she receives so many of those messages and reviews. And when she shares them, that it makes my day every day. Every day. So if you are someone who has left us a review, we are literally live humans are doing a happy dance when you share those beautiful things. So please know they are received with so much gratitude. I just think the community is woven into nearly every chapter, but especially there's a chapter called Building Your Dream Team and Creating Your Conscious Business. And the Eversio family has just been this support system and constant reminder of what's possible when like-minded people come together for a shared purpose. So the courage, the vulnerability, the questions that we receive from our community, they are how I built the exercises in the book. So I didn't have to do too much of my own work. You guys did that for me by asking such great questions and being so vulnerable through these 5 years. The themes that are there, even really the tone of the book, it's your voices in my heart. And I want each reader to feel like I'm sitting across from you saying, you're not crazy, you're waking up, and keep going. Because all of those stories, all of those questions, all of those reviews were with my outline.
Love that so much. Eversio means change. We talk about this all the time. Functional mushrooms bring us back to ourselves, and we're constantly changing and evolving. And I imagine something so sacred as this process where you're turning the magnifying glass inwards, turning the mirror inwards, looking at some of the parts of yourself that maybe you haven't spoken to in a while through this process, to let it go. How has writing this book changed you, whether it's personally and or professionally?
Yeah, I think we are all changing all the time. And if you're not changing, it's time to start, because we are meant to be transforming, evolving, growing all throughout our life. And when we stop, when we think we're done, that is when the healing stops as well. So I think writing the book has been one of the most clarifying and transformative experiences of my life. It cracked me wide open. It just asked me to revisit the darkest corners of that healing journey and to really trust that my voice, just as it is enough. And if mine is, then so is yours. And it just deepened my relationship with myself, my relationship with nature, the creative process itself, which I think is so undervalued, especially in our education system. We just don't make time for it. We're going to fix that. Professionally, it just super grounded me in my purpose like never before. Just reaffirmed that what we are building at Eversio is more than a business. It is a consciousness movement. And this book has just helped me to embody my mission more fully. So I no longer just talk about healing. I live it and I lead it and I share it as truth. And I hope that that comes through in the pages.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Isn't it funny how the hardest moments in our life end up becoming the most beautiful?
Yep.
It doesn't feel like that in the moment.
It sure
what
does.
is happening?
Absolutely does not in the moment. I wish that I could go back to those moments. I do. In my meditations, I often go back and whisper, and I write about that in the book, how we can all identify those moments. And when you are deep in those meditations and you're able to feel connected to something greater than yourself, that is the time to revisit past you and whisper those things, those words of encouragement, those little bits of inspiration that I think move us to where we are now and to who future you will be. So no doubt. Live it and lead it and then share it.
Well, what's next for you? More writing? Another book? A children's book? More mushrooms?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I always thought I'd write a children's book because I love reading them to children. I love reading them to myself. We still have a huge collection of picture books in our house. I think all of the above. This book feels like the beginning of something, a conversation that's only just getting started. I already feel the stirrings of more writing for sure, deeper dives into conscious entrepreneurship, conscious business, parenting in a post-pharma paradigm. There's the name of a book. It's hard. I have teenagers, one living at home, one not living at home. And there's not a day that I don't think of how different the world is for them growing up right now. And I am not a parenting expert, but I think I have been through parenting infants and preschoolers and children and teenagers and an adult now. And I think that I wish I had had a me to go to. So I think parenting will be a big one for me, perhaps even a guided journal of some kind, maybe to accompany this book. On the mushroom side, Eversio continues to grow in the most intentional, heart-led ways. And I think we're going to expand, you and I, Dr. Des, our educational initiatives. I know there will be writing to be done there and creativity. We want to keep building this community, the rituals in the community, and just stay rooted in the magic of the fungi, in the earth-based healing. And I think ultimately what's next is more alignment, more authenticity, more sacred disruption. The old ways are crumbling, and I am here to help build whatever comes next. So I don't know what it will be, but there's definitely a lot coming up for me.
There's a lot. I'm excited. I'm very grateful to, have a front row seat to all of that. And I'm so proud of you for this whole process, and I appreciate you sharing your heart with us today, because the Eversio community is part of that. That is the Eversio Experience. That's why we named it.
Yes.
And that's why we named this podcast the Eversio Experience, because it's all encompassing of life, all the messy brilliance.
Yeah.
I know this book is going to touch so many lives, and to our listeners, we appreciate you and thank you for being part of this journey, and we really can't wait for you to read the book when it launches coming soon. So
coming soon.
Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and stay connected.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.